This is a Campus Weather Service live broadcast of Hurricane Dorian, tracking the tropics. Now reporting, Joseph Spear and Alex Iverson.
I'm Joe Spear. And I'm Joe Spear. Here we have our full team coverage of the storm as it moves away from across the Atlantic and towards the United States.
Hurricane Dorian was the fifth Category 5 hurricane in the last 4 years as it made its way into the northwestern Bahamas. It has now weakened to a Category 4 hurricane as it is stalled out of the northwestern Bahamas. For the last couple of days, and it's been very strong with the eye wall just sitting right over some of those eyes. For more updates on the current conditions of the storm, let's take it over to Jacob Morse.
Thank you, Alex. Let's first take a look at the high-resolution infrared satellite image of Hurricane Dorian. Currently a Category 4 storm and has weakened a bit since it made landfall yesterday afternoon on the island of Great Abaco with 185 mile-per-hour winds and a central pressure of 911 millibars. Right now, winds at 145 miles per hour, pressure at 940 millibars. But the key point is that the movement is stationary. This storm is not moving at all right now, sitting over the Grand Bahama Island right now, battering that island with very, very strong winds. The city of Freeport, you see right there on that western end of that island, dealing with the eye wall of the storm for several hours. Luckily, this storm does look like it will move off to the north in the next 24 to 36 hours. So that will be some relief for the people that do live on this island that's been having to deal with these very, very strong winds over the past 24 hours. Now, watches and warnings are in effect for Florida coastline of hurricane warning in effect from Jacksonville all the way down towards just north of Miami, where this storm that will be moving up the coast of Florida. There is still some uncertainty as whether if the storm will make landfall or not. Right now, it looks like it won't make landfall, but Grant will have more updates on that in a little bit. Hurricane watches are in effect right now for the coastal areas of Georgia as this storm is set to move up toward those areas later in the week. Here's the current radar and satellite representation of the storm. You can see that very well-defined eye just to the north of Grand Bahama Island, and it will continue to be remaining stationary over the next couple of hours before finally making that turn towards the north. This is what a lot of meteorologists like to look at, steering patterns in the atmosphere to show whether these systems will be moving in a direction over the next couple of hours or days. If you look at this water vapor satellite imagery, we can see this trough digging down towards the south in Georgia and South Carolina. This will be one of the key players that will help to influence Dorian in moving towards the north over the next couple of days, but Grant will have more updates on how this storm will be making that northerly turn and hopefully avoiding the peninsula of Florida. Let's close out by looking at the wind speeds. Right now, Freeport is not reporting any wind speeds. That weather station has been knocked out due to the exceptional winds that it has been dealing with over the past couple of days. But along the Florida coastline in Vero Beach and West Palm Beach, dealing with sustained winds at around 21 to 22 miles per hour. They'll be dealing with some tropical storm force winds to maybe even some Category 1 or Category 2 strength winds in the coming days as Dorian tracks up the Florida coastline. We'll send things back to you at the desks, Alex and Joe.
And thank you, Jacob. And aside from the wind over in Florida, the winds inside of Hurricane Dorian, when it was a Category 5, had reached upwards of 185 miles per hour and were even gusting relatively close to 200 miles per hour.
And a couple of facts about this storm and some trivia and history. The National Hurricane Center stated today that Dorian has tied the 1935 Labor Day hurricane for the strongest sustained winds at landfall, and it is also tied second for the maximum sustained winds in the Atlantic, with Hurricane Allen taking first place with 190 mile per hour winds.
So if you recently browsed social media, you'll notice that there's been numerous posts showing these winds and just how strong they are. Videos of trees, buildings, and just infrastructure, including windows, are just being ripped apart by Hurricane Dorian as it makes landfall. And now we'll send things over to Rob Johnson, who is our social media coverage expert.
Thank you so much, Joe and Salix. As you both already know, and our viewers know, that this storm has just been churning around in the Bahamas, and that's where we've seen the most damage so far. Not as much happening in Florida just yet, although there are watches and warnings posted along the Florida coastline. Michael Pintard, the Minister for Agriculture in the Bahamas, posted a video earlier. Unfortunately, we can't show you that video footage. However, he says there's flooding as high as 20 feet in his own home. CNN International posted his video, and we're seeing similar damage all across different portions of the Bahama Islands. Let's begin by showing you Keon McGee, who is a representative in Florida, and let's show you that video right here. And he says this in his tweet, that he was just sent a video by Aram Lewis, a member of parliament. The video was recorded by that parliament member's niece, Janice Lewis, who is now trapped at a home with her mom, Daisy. We'll show you that once again. There's also a 4-year-old daughter inside and a 4-month-old baby boy. It's really just breaking our heart. Already, the hashtag Bahamas Strong is trending. We'll show you more of what's happening across the island here. So much damage, so much flooding. A lot of the times people talk about hurricanes, they talk about the wind damage, but it's also the flooding that's occurring as well. This person, Travis C. Carroll, says that he does not own this video, nor did he take the video, but it was sent to him. A resident of Grand Bahama shows the horror unfolding inside his home during Hurricane Dorian. Our prayers definitely go out to them in that community. More happening here. This family is on the upper level of their home. This is as high as they can go, and there's already water beginning to seep right into the upper portion of the roof. You see it right there, just flushing in. And if we were to show you or the sound of this video, it is so loud and so terrifying. Let's show it to you one more time. Just a 10-second video, but it really shows a lot as the water begins to seep in. They can't go any lower, and they've been in this home for over 12 hours right now. It is still just so horrifying what's happening as waves or rushes of waves begin to take over the top floor of this house. Furthermore, another scene, this was posted by Palm Beach County, WPBF 25 News in Florida, and still another shot of the flooding and really gusty winds as well. You see trees being knocked over and then flooding, huge rushes of rain starting to come right into the kitchen and also the bedroom portion of this home right here. Almost no place for people to go when they're trying to evacuate. And we saw some other places trying to evacuate as well. A scene that is beautiful but also just really horrifying as well is a shot from the International Space Station where you get a captured view of what's happening here on Earth. And here's what the tweet says: Hurricane Dorian on September 2nd. So today, the view from space as the space station passes across Earth as the storm churns over the northwestern portion of the Bahamas. And the island of the Grand Bahama has really been experiencing a huge brunt of this storm because the storm is just stalling, sitting there for hours and hours at a time, making it a whole lot worse. Of course, it was a Category 5 hurricane, now a Category 4 storm, but it is still dangerous and it is still deadly as well. So our prayers definitely go out to them. This gentleman right here, Latrey Raming, a great guy to follow on Twitter, as he's been giving a whole bunch of updates and a whole lot of video content as well. We'll share this with you. We now know that there are evacuations happening that were happening yesterday, in fact, and they were trying to evacuate people off of the island and islands in the Bahamas with tractors and a dump truck. Let's show you right here. There's a dump truck, people fully inside of that vehicle, but also a tractor trying to move people along and get past all the debris that's on the roads. And you even see what's happening on the ground right there. All these trees and tree limbs pushed off to the ground. Even as the storm continues to push past this area, people just disheveled and not knowing what to do with themselves after so much devastation has happened on this island. And furthermore, one more in Abaco, the Abaco Islands. We'll show you this content right here. Someone saying it's almost underwater as Hurricane Dorian is pounding the island. This was when it was a Category 5 storm, but it is still pretty potent as well. You see that car in the distant background and the rush of water coming right through it. And if you are ever caught in any type of water situation while you're driving, remember, turn around, don't drown. You do not want to be caught in anything such as this. And we pray for the Bahamas, hoping that everyone's going to be okay. Once again, heavy rain and heavy winds as well. Another tweet I want to show you, though, is by the same person I just mentioned to you a bit earlier, Latrey Raming. He says this: we have to make sure that charity and our humanitarian efforts are long-term, because this will take months, and it will be a long time for the islands to recover. I want to show you this picture. This comes from Garrett Black, who was a meteorologist and hurricane hunter in the Air Force, and he snatched this really interesting photo of the hurricane eye wall, inside the eye wall. And notice this, you almost see a stadium effect. You do see a stadium effect, in fact, with clouds increasing with height. So think of Eagles Stadium or any type of stadium you can think of, and as it arches upward. What you see here is that the eye in the center of a hurricane is in fact the most peaceful place to be if you were to put yourself any spot inside of a hurricane because of subsidence or sinking air. It's very calm inside the eye wall. And a lot of people, if you're not careful, you may begin to think that you are in a safe position and that you are in a comfortable position, but that's not truly the case because right on the outside of the eye wall, heavy winds, heavy rain as well. So that's your stadium effect there. It truly is a beautiful disaster, beautiful in the sense that of what Mother Nature can produce, but a disaster in the sense of what it's doing in the Bahamas as the storm inches closer to the Florida coastline as well. We'll keep tracking social media right here in the Social Media Center. Until then, I'm Robert Johnson. Alex and Joe will hand it back over to you.
Wow, thank you so much for that update, Rob. That picture of the eye truly shows the severity and the scale of this storm at hand. And we do have an update coming from Grand Abaco Island in the Bahamas. There has been 5 reported casualties, so a very sad day for those living in the Bahamas right now. Again, Hurricane Dorian is currently situated over the Bahamas, just north of them, and is stationary, as Jacob had mentioned, and it's moving west at approximately 1 mile per hour, so that still would be considered pretty stationary. The storm is not stalled out forever. It will be making its way over towards the United States. Although the storm is making its way towards Florida and other East Coast states, Juno Beach Pier in Florida has actually reported some strong winds today with 40-mile-per-hour winds and gusts of 56 miles per hour this afternoon.
Yeah, and most of the southern portion of the eastern seaboard is under some sort of watch, whether it be a hurricane, a storm surge, or a tropical storm watch. And this spans all the way from the Atlantic coast of Florida all the way up to southeastern Georgia. And along with this, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and Orlando airports have shut down in preparation for Hurricane Dorian making landfall or being somewhere close. But for more on the track, we'll send things over to Grant LaShaw.
Thanks, Joe and Alex. And the first thing we're going to look at tonight is the water temperatures here that the hurricane is going to be dealing with over the next 36 to 48 hours and beyond. And of course, water temperature is one of the most important things for a hurricane to sustain itself. And as you can see, with our color scale here being the lighter colors representing cooler water temperatures and darker colors being warmer temperatures, that this hurricane has a lot of warmer water to work with. You can even see the Gulf Stream popping up off the coast of North Carolina as it goes off towards the upper Atlantic. With that, these temperatures are sitting right here in the mid-80s, and with that, that hurricane is really going to be able to sustain itself and keep those stronger winds and that lower pressure with the water staying as warm as it is. Another important factor to look at while we're looking at hurricane, whether it can sustain itself or not, is wind shear. A lot of wind shear isn't good for a hurricane. It tends to tear it apart and make it not as strong as it otherwise could be. With that, we're looking over here, we're going to look at the European model to see its forecast for wind shear in the next 48 to 72 hours. So with that, the lighter colors here represent less wind shear, with the darker colors representing more wind shear. And as you can see, ahead of this hurricane track here, you can even see where the hurricane is with the lower values of shear, that there's not much shear ahead of this hurricane at all. Maybe some more moderate shear than there was when it was passing by the coast of Florida, but really other than that, nothing close to both the Carolinas that would prevent it from maybe dissipating due to wind shear. So as you can see, as we get off to Thursday, as we get close to the Carolina coast, the strongest shear is really staying well northeast of the hurricane, so there's nothing really going to be stopping it from growing any stronger. So as you can see, we're going to take a look at our Dorian setup. So as we've been talking about, Dorian's been remaining mostly stationary, and that's due to the lack of steering aloft, which has made it sit pretty much right over the Bahamas. But with that, Dorian's going to start moving here in a second. We're going to have this ridge, this area of higher pressures develop over the Atlantic, and you're going to see some darker colors also appear over the continental United States in a second. And with that, those areas of higher pressure are going to act to push Dorian north and east. So with that, that's going to prevent Dorian from possibly making a landfall off the Carolinas. And as those ridges converge, you're going to see that Dorian's going to make its way out to sea. So here you go, right off the coast of probably very close to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Wilmington, North Carolina. You have the area of high pressure over the United States right here, the area of high pressure over the Atlantic right here that's acting as a steering mechanism to make sure that Dorian doesn't make it too far on land. So with that, we're going to take a look at both the model comparisons of the GFS and the European model here as we look over into the future. So with that, you can see there's not much disagreement in terms of where Dorian's going to be through at least Wednesday morning for both the GFS and the European model. Both of them keep Dorian from making landfall in Florida, and they're going to have it, we're both taking it up to close to the Carolinas and not making landfall there either. Maybe not until Thursday, Friday, or very early Friday morning, a potential landfall here stated by the European model, but the GFS looks like it keeps it well out to sea. And of course, those coastal areas will see the effects of maybe a Category 1, Category 2 hurricane, but they will not see landfall. And as we take it off closer to the weekend, Friday evening, you can see that Dorian's making its way out to sea. Probably still, you're still going to see impacts down in Virginia Beach, maybe Norfolk, Virginia, and of course, Ocean City, Maryland. So with that, let's take a look at the ensembles. The ensembles are a way that meteorologists are able to predict events basically by tweaking the initial conditions of the model. So different initial conditions will obviously change the forecast that the model wants to produce. So with that, you're seeing each member of the GFS ensemble. So with that, you're tweaking those initial conditions ever so slightly, and with that, the forecast is changing. So even with those initial conditions being tweaked, you can see that there's not much disagreement in terms of what Dorian's going to do here in the next few days. As we shift a little bit northward here, you're going to see maybe some models have it a little bit further west, maybe a little bit further east, but the main consensus here is that it's not going to make landfall in Florida, but there still is a potential landfall in South Carolina, maybe near the South Carolina, North Carolina border, but impacts, again, we'll say mostly along the coast. So with that, let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center forecast. Here they have Dorian down here, sitting down near the Bahamas where it is right now. And in the next 48 hours, you can see that Dorian's going to stay off the coast of Florida, just as we said, still maintaining itself as a strong Category 3 hurricane. And then by the time it makes it into midweek, we can see that it's going to be pushing itself along the Carolinas, off the Atlantic coast, still maintaining hurricane status the whole time. That's the most important thing. Even though it's not a Category 4, Category 5 hurricane, we're still going to see the effects of a strong Category 1, Category 2 hurricane that will make itself known, especially along the beaches of North and South Carolina, even up into Virginia. So that's still something we have to take into consideration. Now I'm going to toss it back over to Salix and Joe at the desk.
Thank you, Grant, for that update and some of those tracks that we saw earlier. Here with me now is our expert, Paul Mikolajczyk, a grad student at Penn State. So I have a couple of questions for you just so we can get a sense of what's happening with this storm. Like we had mentioned earlier, it is stalling right around the Bahamas. Do you want to explain to me why it might be doing that be causing this?
So Dorian is stalling because of competing influences in the atmosphere right now. So there are many factors that are kind of competing as to where Dorian should go next. And there's low-level flow that's out of the southeast, and there's upper-level flow that's out of the west. And so Dorian, feeling those competing influences, is not really moving around very much. And unfortunately, it is stalled out right now, very close to Grand Bahama and very close to the Freeport area as well.
Right, and so another thing that is common with hurricanes is eye wall replacement. What is this, and how would this change how the hurricane is itself?
Eye wall replacements are really common with stronger hurricanes like Category 4 and 5 hurricanes. They occur quite often, and actually we did see Dorian go through an eye wall replacement as a Category 1 actually, and that was because the eye wall was quite small, and when those eye walls are pretty small, they're more susceptible to go through those eye wall replacement cycles. And as a whole, eye wall replacement cycles, once they're finished, the eye grows in size, and not only that, but also the wind field expands as well. And this is really important because even though the track for Dorian stays offshore, we are looking at some spread as to how close it's going to get to Florida. So if you have a situation where Dorian is only about 50 miles offshore, a larger wind field is very important because that would mean more people are impacted by tropical storm and even hurricane conditions.
Yeah. What would some of those impacts be looking like for Florida, and even like both Grant and Jacob had mentioned maybe moving a little bit closer into the South Carolina, North Carolina area too?
Definitely surge is a big factor. Surge is essentially a wall of water that the storm generates with its wind field. And when it's stationary like this, it has quite a big surge. And as we saw with Hurricane Matthew back in 2016, that paralleled the coast, it basically had that whole wall of water parallel the coast. And it was quite an intense surge. So definitely, even if this storm does stay offshore, which does look pretty likely for Florida, the impacts will certainly be felt in terms of storm surge and in terms of wind impacts as well.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for all of that, Paul. We're going to take it for some more safety tips with Abby.
Thanks, Alex. So one of our top priorities here at Campus Weather Service is your safety. So first and foremost, we want to heed evacuation warnings. This is very important because if not only do you endanger yourself, if you don't heed these warnings, you're also endangering the lives of first responders that could have to rescue you if you decide to stay home. And also, even though there might be a storm that you've stayed for before, every storm is different, so you can't be sure that conditions will be okay to stay for this time. So with that, we need to have a plan. So if there is no warning at this time, there could be an evacuation warning issued at any time, so you always want to be prepared, have a plan with your family, have somewhere to go, have a hotel to stay at, and have a travel plan, and things prepared to take with you. And with that, an emergency kit is also something that is very important. So we're going to take a look at some things that you might want to have in your emergency kit. So first, bottled water. Super important because if you don't have access to fresh water at the time, if there's flooding, if you can't get to a supermarket or something like that, you always want to have fresh water on hand. Next, we have non-perishable food. This could be important if your refrigerator stops working. Again, you can't get to the supermarket because there's flooding or damage in the area. So you definitely want to make sure you have that on hand. Next, a charged cell phone. This may be obvious, but if you lose power, you don't want to be on your phone searching the web, something like that, because if you're draining the battery and you have power lost, you don't want to be without a cell phone in case there's an emergency or you need to check up on your family or something like that. And next, we want to have some kind of weather alert system. So if you don't have access to a cell phone or anything like that, you want to have a battery-powered radio so that you can hear weather alerts coming through the radio to make sure that you are safe. And just some tips, if you are staying home, if there's no evacuation warning or for some reason you have to stay where you are, you want to make sure that if you lose power, you never operate a generator indoors because generators create carbon monoxide, which is a poisonous gas. You can't see it, you can't smell it, but it is a silent killer, so you definitely want to make sure you do not do that. And next, especially if you are in an area where there's a lot of trees or things that could fall onto your home or damage the roof, something like that, you want to stay in an interior room to protect you the best from something like that. And next, never climb to a level without windows. This is important if you are in a floodplain, if there's storm surge, because even though as the water is rising, you may think the best thing is to go to a higher level. Don't go somewhere like an attic, because if there's no windows and the water level is rising, you won't be able to escape. And lastly, one of the best things you can do to protect yourself is always listen to the weather alerts that are coming through the news or the radio, and stay tuned with us here. And with that, I'll send it back to the desk with Joe and Alex.
And thank you, Abigail. Here with us tonight, we have a former graduate of the Penn State Department, Steve Hallett, who is currently down in Florida on Amelia Island. Steve, are you here with us?
Yes, hello, good evening.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you, can you give us sort of a general vibe about what's going on down there as Hurricane Dorian is starting to approach?
It's actually pretty mixed. I live pretty close to the beach, and, I was out and about earlier today, and I saw a lot of